Well, hey everyone, welcome to the Ridge Community Church Online. Thank you so much for joining us here today. My name is Tyler. I serve as our online campus pastor, and I want to welcome all the moms and all the women and everyone else who is joining us today as we are celebrating Mother's Day here at the Ridge. We're just so grateful for all the incredible women who have had these amazing impacts on our lives. I want to give a special shout out to two of them in particular. The first one is my wife, who you'll see a picture of on your screen. She's a great mom to our two kids, Jalen and Brennan. But also, she does a great job by investing in the kids in our Ridge Kids environment. She serves on one of our teams at our Greenfield location there, as well as she goes out of her way to mentor other young moms. And so my wife is just incredible. In fact, if you were to meet her and talk to her at all, you would wonder right away, how did Tyler marry up like that? I ask myself that all the time. But another incredible mom in my life is actually my mom, which you'll see a picture here. We just did a race together not too long ago. And 37 years after being born, my mom still is a very incredible encourager. She supports me, and she is always there for me and my siblings whenever needed. And she's also part of the Ridge Online. So if you're in our chat, just go ahead and say hi to her and welcome her there. But just happy Mother's Day to all of the incredible moms and all the women in our lives. We are just so excited to celebrate you today. In fact, here's what I want to encourage you to do. If you can go on your favorite social media channel and post a picture of that special woman in your life and tell us what makes them so great and tag the Ridge in it. And you can tag us in your favorite social media channel. And when you do that, we would just love to celebrate that mom in your life together with you. And then you can take today's link and just share it with them and invite them to join you for the Ridge Online if they're not with you already. And today's an incredible day to be here as we are in part 2 of the series that we're in called Less This, More That, 3 Keys to Healthy Relationships. And we know that the strains that have happened over the last couple of years have caused some strains in several relationships. And so what we want to do is we want to look at these keys to help bring more health to these relationships, perhaps get them to a healthier spot than they've ever been before. And today's key, this is something that I think is a symbol of moms in our lives. And my friend Jody is going to unpack that in just a little bit. Jody, she's an incredible mom, an incredible woman who influences many, and we can't wait to hear from her as she takes us through this key today to unlock healthy relationships. But before we hear from Jody, our band actually put together this song that they wanted to share with you that helps remind us of all the great women in our lives. Go ahead and check this out.
Note to self, clean the living room. Do the things you don't want to do. Maybe fold that week old pile of clothes. Note to self, get some exercise. Feels bad and you have to try, but as far as I can tell, that's how life goes. Note to self, don't let yourself worry quite as much. It'll end up fine enough. It always has up until now. Something else, you should think of other people a little more. You should have thought of that before. 'Cause of everything you've written down, this is the first note that you wrote for someone else. Note to self. Note to self, keep choosing her. She's yours and wonderful, and forever is a long time to be sad. And one more thing, call your mother back. Talk for too long, it's probably half of what she'd like. She's the only mother that you have. Oh, and don't let yourself worry quite as much. It'll end up fine enough. It always has up until now. Something else, you should think of other people a little more. You should have thought of that before. 'Cause of everything you've written down, this is the first note that you wrote for someone else. Note to self. reminding myself to be who I wanna be and not somebody else. Just thought by now I'd figure out the who and how I wanna be. 'Cause I still let myself worry way too much. It ends up fine enough, it always has and does still now. And I still need to think of other people more. Yes, I've thought of that before. Maybe one day I'll figure out you don't find peace till you love somebody else. You don't find peace until you love somebody else. Note to self.
Well, happy Mother's Day to all of my fellow moms. Hey, it is the toughest, but also the best thing that I've ever done. And I've learned that really a mother's love is something fierce, and it is to be celebrated. So moms, here is to us today. Well, this week we're continuing a series on relationships. And hey, if you are like me, you need this series, because let's be real. The last year or year and a half has been so brutal for relationships of all kinds, not just romantic, but family and friends and coworkers. But if there is a secret sauce to really transforming them and getting them back to healthy or even healthier than they've ever been, hey, sign me up. So each week in this series, we're learning about one thing that's going to get us there or get us closer. One thing the greatest relationship guru ever, Jesus, taught and then lived out and modeled. And we're figuring out some really tangible ways that we can apply that one idea to our relationships. And this tangible takeaway thing has been really my favorite part of this series in particular, because really we just want to be able to act on this stuff and improve our relationships the second you flip off this screen. Well, this week, we're going to talk about something that honestly has blown up a bunch of times in my face. You know, I think sometimes God grows me best by humbling me first. But I just want to tell you up front that I struggle with this, and I struggle a lot. So what are we going to dig into? Well, our big idea is that we want to be less selfish and more selfless. Now, when you look at the words next to each other, they look almost the same, but man, they are light years apart. And aren't you glad we're living in this world that's just becoming more and more selfless every day? Why are you laughing? You're laughing because you know what we all feel together. We're living in a world that's becoming more selfish, more self-centered, filled with self-promotion. You know, I even Googled self-promotion because as I was writing this, I got a little curious. And I'm actually a little frightened now that I did, because here are the top hits. I wanted to share them with you. The first thing to pop up was the definition. Okay, I get that. That makes sense. And it's just the practice of purposefully trying to present oneself as highly competent to other people, even at the expense of being liked. Well, you know, we're off to a great start there, aren't we? Okay, so here's the second one. It was an article, and the title is 5 Tips for Practicing Self-Promotion Without Being Totally Annoying. That's really, really encouraging. Okay, third one I found, last one I want to share is actually a video from a career coach. And she titled this video, How to Do Self-Promotion and Still Respect Yourself. Okay, so what are we taking away here? The experts on promoting say self-promoting equals a life that is all about you, which makes you into an annoying jerk that doesn't even respect yourself. Awesome. Hey, it is impossible to have healthy relationships with you at the center. That's why it's so important that we dig into this today. But hey, you do not need to take my word for it, because Jesus talked about this a ton. Here's just one example. And actually, if you aren't somebody who follows Jesus yet, you might actually recognize this when he said to the people following him at the time, whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves, take up their cross, and follow me. Now, you must do this. It's not an option for the people who follow me. That's what he says. You want to be like me, be less about you, because you can't follow me and you at the same time. Did you know that this is actually the most quoted saying of Jesus? Well, I think it is, because we get to see him calling us to something so much better than a life about ourselves. Now, a little while after he says this, the guys who follow Jesus closest are just arguing kind of back and forth about what it's going to take to be great someday. Jesus shuts them up. He kind of does this with this line that he says, the greatest among you will be your servant. Oh, man. That word servant, it kind of just hits you, doesn't it? Because I'm pretty sure it's impossible to be a follower of Jesus and to be self-absorbed. He just talked about this topic way too much. And hey, today as we're together and you're kind of hearing what I'm saying, it is normal to evaluate the selfishness in your relationships as we're all going through this together. But the big idea while you're kind of running those relationships through your mind that I don't want you to miss is that every healthy relationship, behind every one of them, are two people trying to put the other one first. But the opposite's also true, and man, this is where a lot of us get stuck. Almost every unhealthy relationship has two people trying to put themselves first. Now, before you push back and go, yeah, I don't know. I don't really struggle that much with this, Jody. I think I can prove to you that we all struggle with it, at least just a wee little bit. Okay, you can get out your phone if you want and scroll along with me, but I want you to think about or actually find in your phone the last group photo you took, a bunch of people, a family shot, something that it took you a bunch of takes to make sure you got it right. Okay, so you're scrolling back through your pictures, right? And what are you looking for? Not a good smile. Okay, no, my eyes are closed in that one. What are you scrolling for? You're looking to see how you look in the photo, not anybody else, and we all do it, so just fess up, okay? What you're doing when you look at those pictures is just a tiny, tiny example of what we all do in our relationships. So hey, we all need to be reminded we got to take our eyes off ourselves and live more selflessly. And the verses, man, that we are going to look at today, they're going to do two things for you. First, they're going to convict you about how crucial it is to be more selfless. And then they're going to help you. Remember, we said we want practical ways to live this out when we're done. So it's going to do that too. Today's verses are actually from a letter that was written by the Apostle Paul. And he writes that letter after being inspired by examining the life of Jesus. And I just love how he starts because he's kind of baiting us a little bit, playing with us like a conversation back and forth. And the Message translation, which is just like a paraphrase of the Bible, puts it really, really well. Paul starts this way. Hey, if you've gotten anything out of following Christ. Okay, so most of us are like, anything? I mean, following Jesus has literally changed my life. Paul's like, okay, cool, let's go on. If his love has made any difference in your life, okay, Paul, I just told you he changed my life. He makes me want to be better. Paul's like, okay, awesome. What about this? If being in a community of the Spirit means anything to you, and here, a community of the Spirit just means the local church, like the Ridge, or a circle of faith-building friends that you have that help you on your faith journey. If that group of people has changed your life in any way for the better, Paul's like, that is awesome. And you're like, yeah, I got people who have done that. Okay, good. Then he kind of has a little fun with us. So he says this, if you have a heart, if you care, Paul, I really hope I can get this one right and say, yeah. I mean, like sometimes my husband and my kids would disagree with me, but that's like on a really bad day. I think I got this one. Paul's like, awesome. Okay. If all those things are true for you, then can you just like do me a favor? And at this point, you're probably going, Paul, I need to know what the favor is before you ask it, man. What is it? And Paul says, hey, based on the life of Jesus, you need to love each other in a way that is so deep and so powerful, it changes everything in your life. Well, Paul, I like need and want that. I got to get my relationships back on track. Can you just tell me what it is already? What's the secret? And he gives it to us. But before I tell you, I just got to kind of issue a warning label here because these next two verses are really some of the most convicting you're going to hear in all of Scripture. So here's your warning label. If they don't cut you to the core, if they don't just kind of wound you or give you a twinge or a pain in some way, I don't think you're paying enough attention. So just know that that's coming, okay? But I don't want you to miss this. If you really do, you want your relationships to change, you want to be less selfish, you want to have a transformation occur in literally every relationship you have, no matter what kind of relationship it is, you want to be different. Okay. Paul says this: do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Do nothing. Now, that word nothing, that is what pains me. It's what sticks out, because do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit is different than do some things or most things. That word nothing, man, Paul, I really wish you wouldn't have said it. But he uses the word nothing. Do nothing, literally no thing. All right, Paul, then, what's the alternative? Rather, in humility, value others above yourselves, not looking to your own interests, but each of you to the interests of others. Man, what Paul does in just 2 verses gives us the secret sauce to beat selfishness. He gives us 2 things to get rid of and 1 thing to add. So with the time I have left, I want to dig in and make sure we get each of them right. Okay, so first up, the 2 things that Paul tells us we got to ditch: selfish ambition and vain conceit. And that first one, selfish ambition, if you're trying to understand that, you can think of it kind of just like the idea of competition, or maybe even like a rivalry. And maybe that idea makes more sense in like a work setting or even with your siblings. But some of you are like, Paul, I don't really compete in my marriage. I don't. And Paul's like, oh, really? Okay. How about if we try this as a filter? He wants us to ask a question to kind of set the pace. Am I spending too much energy trying to be right in my relationships? And let me tell you, you already know what this looks like, whether you realize it or not. Because let's say you're talking to a couple and they're sharing a story, and then they start correcting little details back and forth. And they're details that don't really matter in the story to begin with. So what are they doing? Hey, they are competing about who is right. Or how about this example? Maybe you've got a friend that's kind of complaining about their spouse or their partner because they aren't having their needs met. And it's making them question that person's commitment to the relationship overall. Well, hey, what are they doing? They're competing over whose needs are most important. And Paul says, look, there is no room to compete like that in a relationship. Relationships, man, they get enough competition from the outside world. When it comes to inside that relationship, don't do it. Okay, Paul, so we're not going to compete or have selfish ambitions in our relationship. And then the second thing that Paul tells us we got to get rid of to create a healthy relationship is the idea of vain conceit. And another way to say this is just empty self-promotion. It's the idea of wanting to be right. And on social media, this is something that we all call a humble brag. Maybe you've heard that before too. Why is it so empty to begin with? Well, it's because you think you're propping yourself up to make yourself look good to others. But really, man, we all read it, and it's just the opposite. And I guarantee you have seen this too. It's a spouse who demeans their partner because they want to make a point and be right. It's a coach who criticizes a player just to show they know the technicality of all the rules. Or maybe a boss who takes an unfair jab at a teammate. So we have a helpful filter for this one too. If you're looking for vain conceit in your relationships, I want you to ask yourself this. Do I come across in my relationships as needing to be self-important or self-promoting? And let me just confess to you, man, I have messed this up. I have failed at this filter, especially when I first came on staff here at the Ridge. I had attended this place for years before. I just loved it. And so any conference I went to, any networking event that I'd go to, I was just convinced that the Ridge's way was the right way because I loved being here so much. So I overshared it. I just didn't shut up. You want to know how to treat new guests at your church? Don't worry, I got an answer for you. You want to know how to promote a new group? Don't worry, I'm going to tell you how. It's like, shut up, Jody. And it kind of makes me just cringe on the inside to see how arrogant I had to have sounded, how much time I had wasted. I mean, I could have been learning from some other great local churches and local church leaders, but, I just had myself convinced, hey, it's for the church. It's okay. But guess what? Being an annoying and arrogant jerk is just being annoying and arrogant and a jerk, no matter what. That's vain conceit. So, okay, Paul, I get it. Trust me. Don't compete. Don't self-promote. Fine. But then what should I do? What action step can I take to see a transformation in my relationships? I want them to be healthy. What does Paul say? He says this, rather in humility, value others above yourselves, not looking to your own interests, but each of you to the interests of others. Humility, man, that is a loaded and very tricky word. To say humility is misunderstood in our culture, that is putting it mildly. But really, one of the best definitions I have ever seen is the one from C.S. Lewis. Here it is. Humility is not thinking less of yourself. Humility is thinking about yourself less. See the difference there? Humility is not false modesty. False modesty is like when Babe Ruth calls his shot, hits the home run, wins the game, and tells reporters after, yeah, I'm just an average ball player. That's false modesty, okay? Real humility is thinking about yourself less. There's a difference. Reduce the volume, the quantity of the thoughts in your head that are about you. You cut down on the amount of time that you're thinking about you. See, when you do that, then you have a lot more time, a lot more brain power to think of others more. There's more space for them to take up. See, Paul's not saying never think about yourself. He's just saying there's an order of operations. So picture like a math equation from middle school days. You remember when you're looking at that math equation, you had to break it down and do certain pieces first to get to the right answer at the end. Paul's saying, okay, the order of operation in relationships always, always, always is them first, then you. Their needs, then yours, always. Now, this is where it kind of goes south fast for a lot of us. It's like, okay, I got to wrestle through this stuff, Paul, and that's okay to do it. But Paul, you're asking us to like always think of everybody else before ourselves, even that one person who just beats on my last nerve and is like a thorn in my side, like all the time, Paul. And maybe even in your mind, are you saying this? I'd think of them first if they deserved it, if they made me more important, if they really valued me in return. Paul just steps in and says, slow your roll. Okay. Not deserving it is the point. Because if you already thought they deserved it, you'd already be doing it. He says, I'm telling you to do it because they don't deserve it. All right, Paul, that makes it even harder. Like, how far should I really take this? Well, this is where Paul shatters all of our excuses. And he says, okay, you want to know how far to take it? I got you. In your relationships with one another, have the same mindset as Christ Jesus. Same mindset. It really needs to be that mental shift that happens first. What's Christ's mindset? His mindset is that every person has the highest value, so treat them that way. It's not a deserving thing, it's a value thing. Who? Being in very nature God. In nature God. Okay, so every room that Jesus walks into, boom, he is the most important. He's God in the flesh, okay? But he didn't consider equality with God something to be used to his own advantage. What does that mean? He didn't use it as a way of using people. Okay, so what did he do? Rather, he made himself nothing. He emptied himself by taking the very nature of a servant, being made in human likeness, and being found in appearance as a man, he humbled himself. That word comes back again. He made himself nothing means just that he emptied himself and he became like a servant, which, most of us would admit is pretty darn close to nothing. And not just that, he humbled himself. That means he lived every single day as if the people around him were more important than he was. And if you're really being honest with yourself, this is like where it starts to get up in your business, right? And we start to think, okay, fine. You're telling a story and somebody gets a fact wrong. Paul, maybe I can let that slide. I won't correct him. I can get that far. But how far is far enough? How far do I have to take it? Okay, before I answer, I just want to pause for a minute and get really crystal clear here. Hear me now. I am not talking about abusive relationships. What I'm going to say next, if you are in an abusive relationship, you don't listen to this. If you are in a dangerous situation, you need to run and you need to somehow let us know because we can help you get help. But this is not for you. So if you are not in an abusive relationship, how far should you take this? Because Paul, my spouse likes stuff, has hobbies that I don't like. My kids are into video games and music I think is horrible. I can't stand it. My coworkers, Paul, they snag the credit and the rewards, and that's just like less for me. My friends, they always want their way, and I feel like they're walking all over me. Just like, how far do I have to go? Paul says, let me remind you how far Jesus took it. He humbled himself. How? By becoming obedient to death, even death on a cross. Jesus took it so far, he died for us. Now, if you're not a Christian and you're kind of wrestling with this idea hard to like value others above you, I just want you to see something here, that Jesus never asks you to do something that he won't do himself. And for those of us who are Christians, especially Christians with excuses, we need to see what Jesus modeled and realize our excuses really just, they got to melt away. So I'm writing this message and I'm reading these verses and I'm reading them like over and over and over and over. And I'm like, God, I'm not sure how I'm going to do this. How am I actually going to talk about this? Because as I'm reading these verses, literally scenes from my marriage are flashing before my eyes, stuff I've said to my parents when I was growing up, friendships, when my kids have asked something to me and how I've responded, words I've said, bridges I have burned, all of these just like relational missteps, garbage, because I didn't value someone. I thought it was a waste of my time. This is such a struggle for me, and not just once, but like all the time. This is literally hard for me every day because my tendency is to be selfish. And I didn't really want to go here. Full disclosure, I didn't want to talk about this week, but I was actually having a conversation with my husband. I was like, I got to think of something that I can use to like explain how this is just a daily fight for me. And he brought this next thing that I'm going to say up, and we both just started laughing our heads off. So I just know this is very real and also still really raw. So as I'm recording this, we are approaching Mother's Day weekend, right? And my birthday is just a couple of days from now, too. In fact, some years, just depending on how the calendar falls, my birthday is actually on Mother's Day. And I have taken it upon myself to make it very clear that a combo gift for my birthday and for Mother's Day is never allowed, like never. I expect gifts for both, for my birthday and for Mother's Day. And I'm not really going to let my husband or my kids get away with a combo platter of gifts. That makes it super fun, I'm sure, for my husband to try to just get it right. Okay, that's not all though. This year, I get the honor of like being here with you. And this is a huge opportunity, but it's also just a ton of work and a ton of prayer and a ton of mental power to try to be here in a way that honors God, but also honors your time. So this year, I decide what I want for Mother's Day is just to relax after I work so hard. So I tell my husband, hey, honey, this is what I want you to do for me. Okay, just call my mom and my 92-year-old grandmother and your mother and tell them that this year, us and the kids, we're just going to take Mother's Day off because guess what? It is what I want because I'm going to be tired. So go handle that grenade for me and blow up the relationships because it's Mother's Day and it's my birthday and I want it how I want it. Super inspiring behavior, one of my finer moments. Yeah, it boils down to this. Behind every successful relationship are two people trying to put the other one first. And behind almost every struggling relationship are two people fighting to put themselves first. So the question that it comes down to is this: who's going to bend first? I want you to hear Jesus whispering in your ear, you go first. Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourselves, not looking to your own interests, but each of you to the interests of others. So, I have a challenge for you and for me too, trust me. And it sounds really simple, but it's hard. I want you to answer one more question. What's one selfless thing you're going to do for somebody you love this week? And it's really got to be selfless. You can't benefit from it in any way. Here's what I'm betting you're going to realize. We act like the things that we're going to do as a part of this are such a big deal, but actually what's a big deal is our mindset to start practicing them. The acts themselves, they're never the hardest part. So just like plan the date night. Find out your colleague's favorite coffee drink. Bring it in for them. Read the extra book to your kids. Stinking go be with your mom in a cheerful way on Mother's Day, okay? What are you going to do that's actually selfless? And if we begin to do this on a more regular basis, I promise you, man, we're going to see our relationships transform and become more healthy. I'm in to do this week, and I hope you are too, because, man, the only way to see change is to love selflessly the way Jesus loved us. Let's pray. God, we just thank you so much for the example that your son has given us. We thank you for how he stressed the importance of others in our lives, and not just their importance, but he modeled how we should treat them. God, we just admit to you right now that a lot of times we fall short and we get sucked into our own vortex. And it is such a fight, such a challenge to get our minds right and to just rid them of all of these thoughts about us. God, we need you to show up, and we need you to help us do that, because we really, really do want healthier relationships where the people around us know that we value them, that we see you in and through them. God, let us show more of your love and the love of your son to the people we have relationships with, not just this week, but always. And we pray this in your son's name. Amen.
Our hope as a church is to bring the hope of Jesus into every home. And as Jody shared this key to healthy relationships, to be more selfless and less selfish, this allows us to bring more and more hope to those around us. In fact, this key is one of the reasons why we love partnering with a great organization called Safe Families. And I wanted to share a little bit about Safe Families, and here's how they describe themselves. Safe Families is an organization who hosts vulnerable children and creates extended family-like support for desperate families through a community of devoted volunteers who are motivated by compassion to keep children safe and families intact. In fact, while working with Safe Families, parents voluntarily have their kids cared for by a host family while they seek to restore stability in their lives. Safe Families is dedicated to family support, stabilization, and child abuse prevention. Their goal is to strengthen families and to always reunite children again with their parents. They're an incredible organization that shares hope with many families, and we have a story that describes just that. Go ahead and check this out.
Hi, Ridge families. Happy Mother's Day to all you mamas out there. We became a host family back in July, and back then I knew that we would be taking in children and providing a safe home and environment for them. But what I didn't realize is that I would have the opportunity of working one-on-one with the mothers of these children. 14 years ago, God blessed me with the best job on this planet, and that was becoming a mother. And I was also blessed with a support system that allowed me to be the best mom I could be. And what I have found is that these mothers are no different than you and I. That is truly what their number one goal is. And they may not have that support system, or they're looking for extra help to get back on their feet, or just be given a second chance to be that mother that they want to be for their children. It's pretty amazing and such a testament of God when you can take complete strangers and maybe a not so great situation, and you work together and become friends and family and make lifelong relationships with the children and mothers, so that not only does that mother grow, but I also grow as an individual, and I get to spread God's love with others and just be proof of what God can do in our lives. And it's one of the most beautiful experiences that I've ever been through, and I strongly urge anyone to look into this program and see what a difference you can make in other people's lives and in your own life?
Safe Families and the Johnsons were what I needed in the moment. There was a lot going on, still is a lot going on. However, they stepped up to the plate and ensured that my son was well taken care of. And even in his tantrums and in some of those hard moments, they were there and did not make me feel less than a person or less than a mom, because I needed intervention at the moment. And even though the hosting has ended, they have been very important in, my son and just the memory of having somebody there when you needed them. I think it's important to support moms because all moms need help. Here's my oldest, but all moms need help. It doesn't make us weak. It doesn't make us invaluable. It doesn't make us less than. It makes us strong to even reach out and to say, hey, I need a hand. I'm nervous, I'm scared, I'm stressed. I need something. So they really made an important impression in my life. And here's the guy that they helped me with. This is Jabari, this is my baby. And he remembers the Johnsons, and I'm grateful, we're grateful for everything you have tolerated and all the sleep you've lost and all of the energy and resources you've expended. I am thankful, and I am eternally grateful to Safe Families and the Johnson family for hosting my baby and making sure that he was safe. Even though I spent a lot of time worrying about my oldest son and his injury, they really stepped up to the plate, and I am grateful. Thank you from me and the Browns. Bye-bye.
What an incredible story of hope, and that boy, so sweet. And it's just so cool to see the hope that God is bringing through Safe Families and through those partnering with Safe Families. And if you're interested in learning more about Safe Families, we would love to invite you to check that out. The best way to find out information and all the ways you can partner with Safe Families or learn more about it is available at the website that you'll see below me, and we'd love to help you get connected with them. Now, another way that we bring the hope of Jesus into every home is by giving back to God. And the reason why is every dollar that we give back to God actually goes forward to bring our vision of bringing the hope of Jesus to every home, and it allows us to reach that vision. In fact, when you give, part of what you give actually goes to these great local and global partners that we partner with so that you can see and be a part of more stories like the one that we just heard of. And so we're going to move into the part of our service that we call offering. And I want you to know that if you're new with us or if you don't call yourself a Christian, you can actually let this part of service just pass you by. But if you are a Christian, I want to invite you to give digitally today. And the easiest way to do that and find out all of the ways you can do that is by going to the website that you see below me. And so let's take a moment, let's give together digitally, and then we're going to hear again from our band.
It's good to be together, praising God and just using this time to encounter Him and worship Him with the songs, whether you're here in the room or however you're worshiping with us online. I was thinking about Moses and just how he was this great leader in the Bible, probably one of the greatest, actually. And he sort of stepped into his role of leadership pretty reluctantly. He tried to run from it. He was like pleading back and forth with God to try and figure out a way for someone else to do it, or that he wasn't qualified somehow. And I just want to read the end of this exchange Moses is having with God, where he's sort of trying to get out of this calling God has on him. And Moses said to the Lord, "Pardon your servant, Lord. I have never been eloquent, neither in the past nor since you have spoken to me. I am slow of speech and tongue." The Lord said to him, "Who gave human beings their mouths? Who makes them deaf or mute? Who gives them sight or makes them blind? Is it not I, the Lord? Now go. I will help you speak, and I will teach you what to say." If that wouldn't fire you up, I don't know what would. That God says, man, he's going to walk with us through life and help us to do greater and greater things. And we have a chance to sing a song that we haven't sung in a while as a church. And it's just going to give us a chance to not only praise God for his greatness and that he can work through us to do great things, but man, Moses was such a great leader, not because of the talent and ability he had, but because of his love and closeness to God, that God could actually use him to further his will. So we're going to celebrate, we're going to sing of God's greatness, but also just pour out our love to him and cry out to him for closeness. So would you join us as we engage with God in this time? I searched the world, but it couldn't fill me. Man's empty praise and treasures that fade are never enough. Then you came along and put me back together, and every desire is now satisfied here in your love. Oh, there's nothing better than you. There's nothing better than you, Lord. There's nothing is better than you. Afraid to show you my weakness, my failures and flaws. Lord, you've seen them all, and you still call me friend. 'Cause the God of the mountain is the God of the valley. There's not a place your mercy and grace won't find me again. Oh, there's nothing better than you. There's nothing better than you. Lord, there's nothing
I hope that you have a great day celebrating all of the moms and all of the important women in your life, and just have a blast honoring and spoiling them. And join us next week when we are in week 3 of this series, Less This, More That. And we're going to look at this third key that honestly is the hardest key for me to put into my relationships. But when I do, I experience the most health out of it. And so I hope you join us for that as we unpack that key, and visit our website anytime to get all of the resources to help get even more out of this series, and you can share that with a friend. And so I hope you do that. Until then, may you go and bring the hope of Jesus into every home and enjoy celebrating the moms in your life. Have a great Mother's Day. Thanks for joining us.